Parallel parking is all about geometry. Thing is, many people never liked geometry in school. That's why many are intimidated with parallel parking. Right now, only half of all American drivers can parallel park in some shape or form. And of those, only half are confident of their skills. Needless to say, most of these folks live in the Northeast, where streets tend to be narrow and parking lots are few. Think New York City is the most obvious example, whereas Americans in the Midwest are the least confident in their parking skills. There's even a name for anxiety when you're parallel parking. It's called parallelophobia. Truth is, the average Joe in America cringes at the thought of parallel parking and views it as a daunting maneuver, especially with giant vehicles that people tend to buy these days. And believe it or not, studies show that parallel parking actually increases most people's heart rates. Today, we're talking everything about parallel parking. And hang on tight, because I'll finish off by sharing a few tips to help you parallel park effortlessly. If you think you're a pro at parallel parking, think again. Here's a real pro, Alistair Moffat. He's a British stunt driver who currently holds the Guinness World Record for the tightest parallel park and the tightest parallel park in reverse. So how tight are we talking here? He managed to fit a classic Mini Cooper into a parking space with just 13.4 inches to spare. Picture this. You're driving high speed towards the parking spot and then you brake skid and spin perfectly into it in a matter of seconds. If that's not as hard as it goes, well then do the whole thing again, but do it driving backwards. Or check out Zhang Hua. He's a Chinese stunt driver who holds the record for the tightest parallel park with a truck. He managed successfully to slide a CGC 4222 die-in tractor unit into a tight parking space. When he finished, he had just 90 centimeters, or 2 feet 11.43 inches, around the tractor. He also held the previous record for tightest parallel park using a passenger car back in 2011. If you get nervous while parallel parking, let's say maybe you start sweating, your palms get wet, and your heart starts pounding, well, first, you're not imagining it, and second, you're not alone. Strangely enough, it turns out that parallel parking can actually raise your heart rate. In a study, researchers took a batch of 20 participants and strapped a Polar H10 heart rate monitor around their wrists. First, they took the drivers' resting heart rates before their attempts to park, and then they measured the rates again as drivers are trying to parallel park. The researchers found out that while the participants made their attempt, their heartbeats rose an average of 57%. In fact, even the most relaxed driver saw his heartbeat raise 22%. But imagine a driver who was the most stressed out. His heartbeat increased a whopping 84% as he tried to parallel park. Talk about your heart beating out of your chest. And that's not all the study found. Researchers found that even backing up increases drivers' heart rates by an average of 46%. So if you want low stress, don't parallel park and don't reverse park either. Pretty much this means just live in the suburbs and rural areas. In addition to real-time recordings, the researchers also surveyed 1,200 people. Participants were asked how they felt about parallel parking. Around 26% admitted it was nerve-wracking. My favorite result of the study was the 20% that said they'd rather catch a spider or visit the dentist rather than parallel park. Ha! And, hilariously enough, 11% said that in the past they parked illegally just to avoid having to parallel park. Interestingly, of those over the age of 55, only 21% hated parallel parking, whereas those under the age of 24, some 37% admitted they disliked it. It's not surprising that the younger generations today are the most apprehensive about parallel parking. In particular, it's Generation Z or Gen Z for short. Basically, this includes anyone who was born between 1997 to 2012. This means the oldest Gen Z driver on the road today is around 27 years old. Colloquially, people of Gen Z are referred to as Zoomers. Here's the thing about Zoomers. Compared to previous generations, they've had a significantly different upbringing. The younger ones of this generation were practically raised with a smartphone in their hands. Another major difference between Gen Z and other generations is their driving habits. Believe it or not, more Zoomers prefer to use public transportation or a rideshare service like Uber or Lyft over driving their own car. There are various reasons for that, for example, environmental or financial concerns. But whatever their reason, limited driving experience has led many Zoomers to have extreme anxiety when it comes to parallel parking. Back in the day, getting your driver's license was a rite of passage. Today, it's a different story. Believe it or not, since the 1980s, the percentage of 18-year-olds with a driver's license has dropped almost 20%. And those in Gen Z who do plan to get a driver's license, many are terrified of parallel parking. That's what has been called parallelophobia, which is the fear of parallel parking. There's something else that isn't helping this trend of parallel phobia. Once upon a time, almost every U.S. state required parallel parking as part of the driving exam. But believe it or not, today parallel parking is only required in 31 states, and that number is dropping. Some analysts even believe that one day no state will require parallel parking as part of the driver's license testing. Personally, I find it hard to believe, especially in states that are more densely populated and have mega cities. Nevertheless, it's an interesting option. But now let's flash back to 100 years ago. In 1927, Paris, France, for example, there was a design where the wheels of the car folded inward, so you could easily slide into a parking spot. The problem was, the foldable wheels also made the car less stable when it was driving on the road. In the 1930s, the car designers thought they finally cracked the code to parallel parking. They weren't afraid of getting wacky and creative. I'm talking about the fifth wheel. It was a pretty straightforward idea. First, you deploy a large fifth wheel. This wheel was located at the back of the car, perpendicular to the rear tires. When the fifth wheel finally touched the ground, the two rear wheels lifted slightly off the ground. This enabled your vehicle to move laterally and scoot perfectly into the parking spot, even if it was a tight fit. In other words, no more careful steering, precise calculations, impeccable timing, braking coordination, and best of all, no more stress for the driver since the fifth wheel would basically do all the work. But today, we don't ever see cars with the fifth wheel. In fact, most people don't even know that 100 years ago, it was a thing that existed on cars. If you're wondering why the idea didn't catch on, well, there's a few reasons. In theory, a fifth wheel might sound pretty simple, but integrating a fifth wheel system into a vehicle is no easy feat. Not only does it complicate a vehicle's design, but it also shoots up production costs. Also, an extra wheel means an extra part that can malfunction and need maintenance and repair. But more than that, parallel parking is becoming less popular as the years go on. Unless you live in a large city like New York, LA, and the likes, most of America really has little need for it on a daily basis, especially thanks to things like multi-story parking garages and extra parking features in cars like parking sensors, power steering, and rear view cameras. In 1965, Ford introduced the wrist twist. Basically, there were two small wheels that could be operated in either hand. Ford advertised it directly to women to help them parallel park. Funny thing is, if you pay attention to the ad, the wrist twist didn't even help the actress in the commercial to parallel park either. You can tell because the clip of her plays in reverse to give the illusion she's parallel parking. But just notice the car behind her is driving backwards. Ha! In all my years of driving, I've found there are 3 tried and true methods of parallel parking. If you're interested in learning how to parallel park or want to make your life easier, here are a few tips. Let's start with the license plate method. First, make sure the parking spot you want to get into is at least 1.5 times the size of your car. Next, turn on your right blinker and pull up next to the car in front of your target spot until your bumper is aligned with the other car's bumper, or until your right mirror aligns with the adjacent car's left mirror. There should be around 2 feet between the mirror and the other car's mirror, or 3 feet between your door and the other car's door. This is your starting position. Now turn your steering wheel 1 full turn to 360 degrees to the right. Check all mirrors to make sure there's no oncoming traffic to your left. When everything is clear, start backing up in the car until the adjacent car license plate is in the middle of your passenger side window. Then turn your steering wheel all the way to the left and back in your car until it's straight and parallel with the curb. Now you're in your desired spot, move your car forward a tad so that you're nicely sandwiched between the car in front and back of you evenly. Then there's the vent method. First, turn on your right blinker and pull up next to the car in front of your target spot. Car's right mirror is aligned with the adjacent car's left mirror. Reverse car straight until the back end of the adjacent car appears in your right vent window, which is a small triangle window in your back side window. Then turn your wheel to the right and start backing up in your spot. When you can see the entire front bumper of the car behind you and the curb in your left mirror, straighten out your wheel and back end straight until your right side mirror is aligned with the neighboring car's tail light. Then turn your steering wheel to the left. Continue backing in until your car is parallel with the curb. Last, straighten out your wheel and move your car forward or backward as needed until you're centered in your spot. Last but not least is the 45-degree method. First, turn on your right blinker, then adjust your passenger side mirror until you can see the side of your own car in 1/4 of your mirror or less. You should also be able to see the horizon line at the top 1/4 of your mirror. Next, pull up your car next to the car that's in front of your desired spot until you can see the adjacent car's rear in the middle of your back passenger window. Your car should be 3 feet from the adjacent car. Now start backing in as you turn your wheel completely to the right. As you're reversing, you'll see a triangle forming in your passenger side window between your car and the side curb. When the triangle becomes equidistant on all 3 sides in your passenger side window, stop reversing. It means your car is at a 45-degree angle from the curb. Next, straighten out your steering wheel and back end straight towards the curb. As you do so, you'll notice the triangle getting smaller and smaller in the passenger side mirror. Once you can no longer see the triangle, turn your steering wheel completely to the left. Continue reversing until the side of your car is parallel with the curb. Then straighten out your wheel and move your car forward or back up until your car is sandwiched between the front and back cars evenly. And there you go. Talking about the steering wheel, years ago, back in January 2021, Tesla decided to incorporate a yoke steering wheel into its Model S and Model X vehicles. But when Tesla implemented it, customers and critics were left scratching their heads. Here's the thing about the Tesla yoke design. It's physically connected to the front wheels, so it takes more than 2 complete rotations to turn from lock to lock. This takes away that smooth spinning element of your average steering wheel. Instead, it's replaced with a choppier motion as your drivers take your hands off the yoke, change their grip, then cross their arms during tight turns. And actually, this choppy motion is even more noticeable at lower speeds. So really, the yoke is more awkward than functional. But now you tell me, is parallel parking a breeze or is it a nightmare for you? Do you know of any other parking tips or secrets? Please share by commenting below. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for your support.